Hello everybody! In this video I'm going to be teaching you all the gardening tips that I've learned living here in Nicaragua. If you live in Nicaragua and you don't garden, you're really missing out. Food gardens are very much a thing here. People have been planting, the right things to be able to feed their families, but not necessarily sell a bunch of it for generations in Nicaragua. So it's really a fascinating thing to get into here because you can find a lot of really awesome food forests that people have already planted, all sorts of really beautiful gardens. You just got to know where to look. But the gardeners and the beautiful plants are all around you once you figure that out. Remember that I offer video consultations if you want to learn about living in Nicaragua as a foreigner, what that experience has been like, access to information, or any kind of general consultation about earning money online, and you want to kind of navigate, learn about income streams, how to set things up, and build a better life for yourself. I promise I can make it worth it. Especially if you bring something to me, you bring a specific problem to our meeting, then I'll help you figure out what you need to do. I believe that you just need to connect to be able to see that you have a part inside you that can figure out exactly what you need. All you need is to just be exposed to this element in other people, and I can offer that to you. The consultations are $20 per 30-minute session, and they're free to be anything tailored to your needs. If you're interested in this, then please check out the top link of the description, or go to calendly.com/JackDermottPitman at any time. If you're growing anything here, start by trying to grow it under some shade. You don't want like total darkness, like it shouldn't be like this dark, but you do want some protection. Like right now it's not too bright because the sun's like over there behind that building and you can see the shadow right over there. But eventually all that sunlight will be on top of all the plants. You see this, you see what's happening. The sunlight is getting weakened, and that's really, really important. You have to protect your plants from the sunlight. You should think of the sunlight as more of a killer than a provider. Another mistake that I made was actually with the soil. So not only did I get way too much of it for this kind of thing, but also I didn't use compost because I didn't know that you basically have to use compost. So because I just bought soil, essentially it was infected with, they're like these tiny little worms. You can't actually see them. And what happens is certain plants like tomatoes, when you grow them, the tomato will grow and it'll reach like a month or two old, and then it'll maybe have some little babies, and then it just dies overnight. Because basically the worms got to part of its roots and ate the root away. So the tomato doesn't have a root system anymore. And it just, like, they literally just die. Like, very suddenly, it's as if they have no water. They just wilt. And 2 days later, they're all dead. The whole plant is dead. And I learned that because I originally was trying to grow tomatoes here. That's what I wanted, like just tomatoes. I started off doing like that whole monoculture approach. But the tomatoes kept dying, and it was really heartbreaking for me because I would grow them and try and figure out and use different varieties of tomato and that kind of thing. So the soil's like really important. You can't really just buy soil. You need a source of good compost. And if you're trying to grow vegetables, like things like tomatoes and whatever, squash, all these kind of things, you really need your own source of compost. So you need like multiple mango trees, ideally. Then you get like infinite, really, really good compost. But unfortunately, most of the time, the mango trees are like, people just throw away the mangoes and get rid of them because they attract flies. So there's a process to making the compost, and I'll explain that. This is the box. It's basically a really deep thing of soil. I'm trying to make like a simulation of the forest floor. So if you're gardening and you're doing monoculture, it's really boring because you basically think you can only plant one thing in one space, and then you can't really do anything but watch that one thing grow. And I don't know about you, but that's really lame. I like having so much stuff happening that, like, I can just look around every day and find different things going on. You know, like you can look around for little new baby plants that have shown up. Or as you can see there, some mushrooms grew, dropped their spores, and now they're dead basically. They're dying. They've done their part. You can see there's the beginning of a mushroom over there, right? Because it just rains, so that kind of thing happens a lot. And also you can see here, these are probably basil actually, because all of that is basil. But this is just a moment to show you what this is. This is all Kalala plants. And what I'm trying to learn from it. As I mentioned, it's just lame to just have one plant. So it's really cool seeing how different plants can grow and their relationships with each other. And yeah, you're not going to get as much fruit as you possibly can. But I personally recommend trying more permaculture and trying to do more companion growing and have different things growing around each other. Just it's way more interesting than just having one plant that you have a bunch of that gets eaten by something and then breaks your heart. The next lesson that I learned about was about the behavior of plant roots. I used to think that a really kind of deep amount of soil was necessary for almost all plants, right? Like I thought of like things like tomatoes, which grow really deep tap roots. And in my experience now, that's actually not the case. You really don't need that much soil. This is an excessive amount of soil. And essentially, it's useful because it basically, nothing grows to this bottom part. The only thing that I've ever found with roots coming out here in the bottom is the Kalala. Anything like a tree, and Kalala is really like a short-lived tree that lives like 7 years. Any tree like that is going to grow roots really, really deep. You really don't need this much. You actually could have almost all of this growth just out of this first amount here. So I essentially used 3 times as much soil as I needed to. So you can see that these are all mango leaves. And the mango leaves themselves don't actually become food for the insects. They become shelter and homes, and they protect the soil from the sunlight. So basically, bugs live underneath the leaves because the leaves become shelter. The soil and the food for the insects actually comes more from the mangoes themselves. Like this. Here we go. And I'll bring those over here. Sorry about the dog, by the way. Here are some mango pits that have basically finished composting. They basically become cities for bugs, and the mango flesh fuses, gets eaten, gets pooped in by the bugs, and becomes this. And this is what you can grow your vegetables in. You need to make sure that it's really old. It's had time to kind of, it shouldn't smell like sweet. There shouldn't be any kind of nastiness to it. It should basically just be like an almost clay-like kind of substance. And this you just need to mix with some like of the leaf material. It's like flaky. So you need the flaky stuff and the nutrient stuff. And it's really easy to make this. You basically just take a bunch of mangoes and bury them. You can make a big pile of leaves like this, and then bury the mangoes inside the leaves. So just cut the mangoes with a machete and leave them on the top of the pile, and you can't do that. It just makes loads and loads and loads of flies, and grows a huge population of flies. So you have to bury the mangoes under something, because flies don't really care about stuff if it's underground or in like a little cave or something. There's actually a pit right here. That is for all the food waste, and it basically grows into a population of these things called black soldier flies, which you can feed to chickens. That's actually what all this stuff is future chicken adventures. Haha. But yeah, mango compost, it's really awesome. You should value having access to a mango tree, particularly if they're mango trees that haven't been maintained, because the area around them has soil that is really, really good to grow vegetables in. The next lesson I learned is that exposed soil in the tropics is basically an open wound. And exposed soil like this causes damage in multiple different ways. I'll talk about two. So the first way is that it literally gives your plants bacterial infections and all sorts of other issues, because the rain comes down really hard and is splashing down on here, throwing dirt up everywhere around. The dirt gets thrown about this high off the ground and just will cover things. And you can actually tell, like, you see how the dirt is there? Anything exposed, see, like this is just caked in a layer of dirt from when it has rained. And it goes to about like here, and it doesn't go that much higher. You can also see it over there. This is a great illustration of the damage that can be caused from the rain throwing dirt on everything. These plants struggle to grow. Like, you can see there's a little bit of growth, but these plants are actually pretty old. They've been here for over a year, and they very obviously suffer. You can see all of the coverage here. This attracts spiders, all sorts of other things, and it eventually causes the plant to die, or at least grow slower. So exposed dirt is bad. You really don't want exposed dirt. You want it to be covered, and ideally by some kind of leaves or something like this. This is actually much better for the soil. When it rains, the soil will keep the water better. It's going to provide more shelter to insects, which will actually be making soil underneath all of this stuff. So even though it's not like aesthetically pleasing, this is healthier for the earth. It helps it. Whereas this kind of exposure like this is really problematic. You really want to keep the water on your property. So when it's raining and it's all exposed like this, the water just evaporates. You see the sunlight right there? That's literally just sucking away the water from the soil. It's just making it just boil away and vanish into the air to be lost. So you don't want that. You really want as much kind of coverage as possible. Now, the last thing I'll talk about in this video is swales. Swales are a really great way of kind of controlling where the water goes on your property. And you basically don't want water to leave. You want it to stay and slowly soak into the ground. So next time it rains, wherever you are, watch how the water flows in your garden. So I'll explain what was happening here and what this is and how to use them. When it rains here, the rain all comes off of the sheet metal roof and then falls down there, and kind of it used to just pool and kind of go under the house. And then here the same thing would happen. This was lower and the water would pool, and then like kind of this whole area would flood, and eventually it would be flooding back there as well. And then the water just kind of drains underneath the house. The problem with that is there's plants and other things over there. And in the dry season, I need to kind of help keep things watered, except the mango tree keeps itself watered, right? So in general, you want the water to go towards areas close to the plants. So basically what this is it's changed. This swale is a trench. It's like, here it's pretty light, right? You see all these bugs growing here? Lots of different bugs, snails, worms, these things. So there it's pretty shallow. But then over here, it's like quite deep, see? And it gets all moist and stuff in the bottom, and that makes compost, basically. But it makes it faster than if the leaves were just sitting. And it also gives you a place to rake the leaves into. So when it rains, what happens is all the water goes over here, and it basically fills in these areas all the way over to the deepest one, which is actually right here underneath all of these leaves. And when it rains, believe it or not, the water will actually, it'll all fill. It'll come all the way over here. It'll go through these kind of choke points, these little channels here, and come over here. And then you notice that this is right next to 1 garden, 2 garden, 3 garden, and the tree is right here. So the water soaks into the ground slowly when it rains. So instead of being wasted underneath the house, going to no plants, the water all comes over here. And this means that when I forget to water things in the dry season, the plants have a chance of being able to get water anyway. And it also encourages the plants to grow much deeper roots, because the swales will basically infect the soil with water. And every year that you have a swale dug and it's raining, the water gets deeper and deeper. So digging one of these holes makes the water go deeper and be more accessible to the plants around it. It's a really fascinating thing. Another great tip is to use UHT bags to grow plants in, and little baby plants. These bags are absolutely amazing. And if you consume milk at all when you're here, this is how it comes, basically, in these bags. And then because it lasts so long, the bags themselves are actually incredibly useful. So let it dry, and then after that, you basically just cut the top off, and you turn it inside out, and then boom, you have one of these. You need to make sure you put some big ass holes in it, like overdo the holes. Do more holes than you think it needs, because it's really important that they can drain, because they're like a really sturdy plastic. So these things last a really, really long time. You don't have to buy them. As long as you consume some milk, you're just naturally going to have these. And with that, you can make all of these. And these things are amazing. I love them. Fill them with compost, put anything you want in them, and just watch it thrive. Now I'll explain how to make like a garden that you can actually grow vegetables in. So you don't want it to be like, this might be a little bit too dark, but I can adjust that by getting rid of leaves on these plants. Again, you always want shade. So this area looks like a cat had some fun with my tomato plant there. This area is like a more traditional garden that you can get kind of what you might expect out of. Whereas if you just try and garden in the dirt, like this kind of dirt, yeah, it's volcanic soil, but most of the things that you'll want to grow won't grow well just in this stuff. This is for like trees and like kalala, things that make really deep roots. But it's so compacted, and it often has like no organic matter. Sometimes it's just construction silt. So you really don't want to grow vegetables in here. You're going to suffer and struggle. So what you do basically is dig a hole. And if you live in a place like Managua, then there's going to be a lot of rocks and rubble. You can see this, right? All these rocks. You find tons of stuff like this. So in digging a hole, you can dig it not too deep. I don't know if you can tell how deep those are, but maybe like about as deep as this stick here. You don't need it to be that deep. And once you dig your hole, you're going to get a bunch of these kind of rocks. And you take all those out and put all the dirt off somewhere else. Then you take a bunch of compost and kind of sift it. And then you take all that compost and then you literally just fill your thing up, press it down a bit, and then fill it up again. So you can just grow it in compost. And once you've done that, you've filled the compost up. At the top, double check, make sure you get all the big things, the mango pits out of the way, that kind of thing. The mango pits are really useful when they're deep, but when they're at the top, they kind of get in the way of your seedlings. So after you've done that, then you need some like mulch to cover. And so here you can actually see this is sawdust, and then it has mulch on top of it. And that works really, really well. This is the first garden I ever made doing that. You can see it's got like a bunch of different plants. There's ginger here. This is all ginger. You can see all the ginger there as well. And then growing up out of this is kalala that just... This garden stays kind of wet because it's shaded, and even when all of the dirt is dry, this has still kept some of its moisture because of that layer of sawdust on the top. It's about this thick. So you can see that's covered. That's because that's a really new garden. I basically just made it, but I don't have any more sawdust or anything to cover the compost with. So if I leave it exposed, my cats are basically going to dig up stuff and shit in it and all sorts of things. And the sunlight will kill the beneficial compost bacteria. So you really want things covered with something at all times, even if it's just like some leaves. I use these big leaf plants for that. The next lesson is about damage during the dry season, which will come from a lack of water and also infestations of spider mites. So these are the same plants as outside, but you can see how they're just damaged, right? They're discolored. They don't have that nice green color to them. They get infested with red spider mites. And the spider mites totally take over because plants need occasional water going over their leaves and falling onto the ground to clean the plants of bugs and other kinds of residues that will hurt the plants. So these plants don't get rainfall cleaning them. I'm sure I can find some somewhere. They're always there. It's just a matter of finding where they are right now. They tend to like really, really dry areas. I'm actually kind of surprised. There's not that many. Maybe they're underneath the leaves? Yeah, here are some. So you see those little red specks and all that white residue? Those red specks, imagine millions of these all on one plant. They will totally destroy beans or anything. So if you're trying to grow things organically, you have to basically deal with these. They will just wreck plants throughout the dry season. These leaves are shiny. These are shiny. These are shiny. Shiny means it's kind of resistant to the spider mite. The spider mite hates water, so if it's just raining, that's enough for it to go away. You can also just wash the plants, but they will totally demolish soft-leafed plants like beans. They'll just, every time I've grown beans, it just turns into spider mites. Like I get more spider mites by weight than beans when I grow beans. Remember that I offer video consultations if you want to learn about living in Nicaragua as a foreigner, what that experience has been like, access to information, or any kind of general consultation about earning money online, and you want to kind of navigate, learn about income streams, how to set things up, and build a better life for yourself. I promise I can make it worth it. Especially if you bring something to me, you bring a specific problem to our meeting, then I'll help you figure out what you need to do. I believe that you just need to connect to be able to see that you have a part inside you that can figure out exactly what you need. All you need is to just be exposed to this element in other people, and I can offer that to you. The consultations are $20 per 30-minute session, and they're free to be anything tailored to your needs. If you're interested in this, then please check out the top link of the description, or go to calendly.com/JackDermottPitman at any time.